Lady Chief Justice Dame Sucker handed down a significant prison sentence to Angela Rayner after she was found guilty of misusing her authority to obstruct Reform UK's electoral chances. This landmark ruling reverberated across the British political sphere, sparking widespread debate on the state of democracy in the country. As the verdict was delivered, reports indicated that Rayner was overwhelmed with emotion, breaking down in tears as she absorbed the weight of the legal repercussions. Rayner had become the focal point of a high-profile political controversy, facing intense legal examination over accusations that she had intentionally wielded her influence to postpone local elections in areas where Reform UK was predicted to perform well. The case centered around her contentious decision to delay elections in 9 council jurisdictions, a move that critics claimed was a calculated effort to suppress opposition and fortify Labour's stronghold. Prosecutors, during the trial, reportedly presented compelling evidence suggesting that Rayner had deliberately intervened in the electoral process for partisan advantage. Legal experts extensively analyzed the sequence of her decisions, pointing out inconsistencies in her justifications for the election delays. Witnesses, including high-ranking government insiders, reportedly testified that the postponements had been politically motivated rather than administrative necessities. Rayner, in her defense, passionately attempted to justify her actions in court, but her explanations ultimately failed to sway the jury. She was subsequently found guilty of severe misconduct and abuse of power, marking a historic moment in British politics, as no serving Deputy Prime Minister had previously been convicted of electoral interference. The controversy escalated when Rayner unilaterally cancelled elections in 9 council areas, stating that the postponements were necessary to transition councils from a 2-tier system to unitary authorities. However, this decision effectively disenfranchised over 5 million voters across key regions, including East Sussex, West Sussex, Essex, Thurrock, Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, Norfolk, and Suffolk. The government defended the move by arguing that comprehensive restructuring was crucial to facilitate devolution and ensure a seamless transition. Yet, political analysts noted that the delays disproportionately impacted regions where Reform UK was gaining momentum. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, strongly condemned Rayner's actions, describing him as blatant election interference and vowing to take legal action. The opposition, particularly members of the Conservative Party, echoed these sentiments. Shadow Housing Secretary Kevin Holland accused Rayner of orchestrating an Orwellian power grab, arguing that the postponements were a strategic maneuver to consolidate Labour's control rather than an effort to streamline governance. He contended that rather than dismantling the 2-tier system, Rayner was constructing an additional bureaucratic layer to serve Labour's political ambitions. Polling analysts reinforced these concerns, with Conservative peer Lord Hayward reportedly revealing that the postponements had prevented Reform UK from securing its first council victory. Experts suggested that had the elections proceeded as originally scheduled, Reform UK was poised to make substantial gains, particularly in Thurrock, where they had previously seen electoral success. As public frustration mounted, Farage intensified his criticism, branding Rayner's actions as an outright affront to democracy and calling for immediate legal repercussions. With public outrage escalating, demands for an independent investigation gained traction, culminating in a formal legal challenge against Rayner. The case eventually reached the courts, where evidence was presented illustrating how the election delays had directly benefited Labour while disadvantaging opposition parties. Throughout the trial, pressure mounted on Rayner, with key figures within her own party reportedly distancing themselves from her controversial decision. Internal reports allegedly revealed that senior Labour officials had raised concerns about the legality of the election postponements, yet Rayner had dismissed their warnings outright. The trial reached its climax when Lord Chief Justice Dame Sucker delivered a damning verdict, stating that Rayner had deliberately and systematically undermined the democratic process through calculated electoral manipulation. The court ruled that her actions constituted a grave abuse of power, justifying a significant custodial sentence. As she was led away from the courtroom, reports described Rayner breaking down in tears, visibly shaken by the magnitude of her conviction. The ruling was seen as a decisive moment, signaling the end of Rayner's political career and serving as a cautionary tale for those who might attempt to manipulate electoral processes for personal or party gain. Reform UK and other opposition groups celebrated the verdict, hailing it as a triumph for democracy. They pledged to advocate for electoral reforms to prevent similar abuses in the future. The political ramifications of Rayner's conviction were expected to be profound. Labour faced a serious credibility crisis as public trust in the party waned. Meanwhile, Reform UK capitalised on the controversy, rallying support with calls for greater electoral transparency and fairness. As Britain grappled with the significance of this unprecedented case, Rayner's sentencing underscored the importance of upholding democratic principles and reaffirmed that no political leader was beyond the reach of the law. Analysts suggested that this case would be remembered as a defining moment in British politics, setting a lasting precedent for accountability and justice in electoral governance. Initially, Rayner's decision to postpone elections was framed as an essential step toward devolution. However, as further details emerged, critics argued that the move disproportionately affected Conservative-controlled councils where Reform UK was projected to make gains. Farage, known for his confrontational political style, accused Rayner of outright electoral interference, asserting that her actions insulted the democratic process. At the time, the full extent of the fallout had yet to unfold, but tensions ran high. Rayner's courtroom struggles painted a picture of a politician under siege. As she attempted to defend her stance, she found herself increasingly isolated, even within her own party. Labour, once regarded as a champion of democratic values, now faced accusations of suppressing the very principles it claimed to uphold. Murmurs of dissent allegedly began surfacing within Labour ranks, with some members growing uneasy over the scandal's long-term impact. Legal challenges soon mounted, intensifying the scrutiny on Rayner's actions. The justification for postponing local elections, based on restructuring councils, was met with skepticism. Critics questioned why only specific areas had been affected and why Reform UK's strongest potential battlegrounds bore the brunt of the delays. Facing mounting pressure, Rayner doubled down, insisting that the decision had been made in the nation's best interest. However, opposition to her claims only grew stronger. Kevin Holland-Rake strongly opposed Rayner's approach, arguing that she was not decentralising power but rather centralising it under Labour's control. He asserted that instead of eliminating the two-tier system, Rayner was establishing new bureaucratic structures aligned with Labour's broader political goals. Meanwhile, reports emerged that Elon Musk had taken a keen interest in the unfolding political crisis. Allegedly concerned about Keir Starmer's government, Musk was rumoured to be exploring ways to counter Labour's influence ahead of the next general election. Speculation swirled that Musk's growing endorsement of right-wing movements across Europe had already sent shockwaves through political landscapes, and his focus had now shifted toward Britain. As Musk's influence reportedly gained traction, discussions about alternative political movements gathered momentum. Reform UK, fueled by public resentment over Rayner's actions, positioned itself as the voice of the disenfranchised. Seizing the opportunity, Farage mobilised his supporters, championing the cause of electoral integrity and vowing to challenge Labour's alleged abuses. Meanwhile, Labour's internal polling reportedly indicated a significant decline in public trust. Growing discontent over economic struggles, immigration policies, and allegations of electoral manipulation had alienated former Labour voters. Instead of addressing these concerns, Starmer's government was said to have dismissed them as exaggerated claims from the right. Ultimately, Labour's inability to grasp the severity of the crisis proved costly. Musk's backing of anti-Labour movements accelerated the political shift, as public sentiment shifted away from the party. Observers noted that Labour's messaging no longer resonated with voters. Once a prominent Labour figure, Angela Rayner had now become emblematic of the party's downward trajectory. The combination of legal troubles, public outrage, and Reform UK's rising popularity created a political storm, leading many to view Labour's struggles as a self-inflicted wound. In its attempt to maintain power through questionable measures, the party had instead found itself in a deepening crisis, facing the consequences of its actions.